I had a near-death experience when I was 6 years old, medical misdiagnosis, but I emerged from that experience as a kid realizing two things. Number one, it's always good to take ownership over your own health. And number two, be skeptical about, shall we say, experts.
Taking a step away from the noise this week is Dr. Rob Williams, an educator, author, and breathwork teacher who's dedicating his life to exploring the space where science meets story and where discomfort becomes the path to growth. With a background that spans academia, environmental history, and human performance, Rob has spent decades helping people reconnect with what it truly means to live embodied.
At Nordic Flow, we train our humans, we teach our humans, we coach our humans to treat their breath as a superpower.
As a certified Wim Hof method instructor and head of education at Nordic Wellness, his work bridges the physiological and the psychological using breath, cold exposure and awareness to build resilience and calm the nervous system.
There is no more powerful protocol for inducing hormetic response quickly, efficiently, powerfully with recovery than cold plunging.
In this conversation, we dive deep into the power of the cold plunge, not just as a physical challenge, but as a daily practice in courage, surrender, and recovery. He shares how stepping into cold water each morning becomes a metaphor for life itself, a way of preparing the mind to meet the unexpected, training the body to stay calm in discomfort, and discovering the difference between distress and eustress, the kind of positive stress that builds strength.
Hormesis is voluntary stress, positive stress, sometimes called EU stress, regularly applied in a titrated measurable dose with recovery to build resilience of mind and body and spirits.
We unpack what it means to face fear through the breath, how psychological resilience is built through voluntary challenge, and why learning to control your inner environment might just be the key to navigating the outer one. From the science of hormetic stress to the simple act of taking one deep, conscious breath, this episode is an invitation to slow down, to reconnect, and to remember that the flow of life always begins in stillness. I hope you enjoy this powerful and grounding conversation with the man, the myth, and my mate, Dr. Rob Williams. Stepping out of the noise and helping us find our way back to our breath and the flow of life is my guest this week and my mate, Dr. Rob Williams. Rob, welcome.
Steve, let's do this. Great to be with you.
It is an absolute honor, mate. And I always say you never meet anyone by accident. There's always a reason. And just as soon as I met you, I just felt this real connection. So it's brilliant to have you on the podcast, and just can't wait to dive in and share some of your insights and some of your experience through life.
Steve, same. I felt the same when we met. We probably shouldn't tell people we met at a tantric sex workshop.
Probably not.
That might raise some eyebrows, but we were part of a really beautiful health and wellness retreat in Sardinia, and so nice to meet you there, and looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, awesome. Now, Rob, when you think about the noise of life, what does that mean to you?
When I think of the noise of life, first and foremost, Steve, my mind imagines my way into breathing, respiration. We humans breathe upwards of 20,000 breaths per day, and we are, as humans, in flow with the rest of living and breathing creation, the noise of life, if you will. Respiration, as my friend James Nestor, author of the book Breath, The New Science of a Lost Art, respiration, James likes to say, is reciprocation. Respiration is reciprocation. So the noise of life for me is really about this beautiful exchange of respiratory energy between each of us as individuals in concert with the rest of living, breathing creation.
Yeah, beautifully said. Now, Rob, throughout your life, I actually was going through all your qualifications, all the things that you've done, all the things you talk on. all the things you're passionate about. And I was actually going to read that out, but I thought that might actually take the whole episode. So I just cut all that out. But take me back to before Rob knew breath, before Rob knew how to step out of the noise of life.
Yeah, that's a beautiful question, Steve. 4 moments in my life. The first, I had a near-death experience when I was 6 years old, medical misdiagnosis. I won't bore you with the details, but I emerged from that experience as a kid, realizing two things. It's always good to take ownership over your own health, number one. And number two, be skeptical about, shall we say, experts. Um, so that was my first sort of aha. Second, I fell in love with the ocean when I was a kid. We would take one family vacation a year to the South Jersey shore, a little town called Avalon. We still go. My mom's 85 years old now. We're still going once a summer. And I loved going into the ocean and feeling the power and the energy of the waves and the cold water and all of the creatures in the ocean. When you're in the ocean as a human, you have this new appreciation for sharing this magnificent world we live in with some very strange creatures in the ocean, which are magical and sometimes can be a little bit ominous. So the power of the cold in the ocean for me as a kid was my second aha. Third, I became a long distance runner in high school. And I fell in love with running. Dare I say, it probably saved my life in high school. The discipline, the camaraderie, the friendship, the competition, and most importantly, Steve, running through the woods every day for 6, 8, 10, 12 miles in company of nature and my mates was just off the hook. Truly changed my life. And then finally, I would say I lost our father in 2006, 20 years ago now. It's hard to believe. And he and I were very close, and he was what you would call a company man. He worked for IBM for 40 years and planning in his retirement to do all of the things in the last third of his life that he hadn't gotten a chance to do yet because he was a loyal husband. He was a devoted father. He was very committed to his work, to church, to his community. And he retired, Steve, and died 3 years later of colon cancer. And I remember speaking at his memorial. I'm the oldest of three of his sons, and we're all very close. And I remember thinking to myself, I love my father. I'm so grateful for his life and his legacy. And I'm going to play out my life a little bit differently based on what he taught me about the flow of his own experience. So those four things: near-death experience, falling in love with the cold in the ocean, falling in love with the forest and long-distance running, and losing my father 20 years ago, I think were kind of my defining moments.
Yeah, wow. And talk to me about, obviously you help a lot of people these days, connect to their breath, connect to themselves. We're living very much in an age of disconnection, right? Not just disconnection from other people, because we think we're connected to them, but we're not actually really connected to them. We've got more technology and more digital kind of, devices to keep us connected, but we've lost some of the, the old fashioned, kind of, let's just sit around a campfire, or let's kind of just go for a swim, or let's go for a hike, or these different things. So talk to me how you're dealing with and how you help people, get back to being more connected to not just each other, but also themselves.
Beautiful. There's a fun Max Frisch line, Steve, that goes something like this: technology is the art of arranging the world so we don't have to experience it. Technology is the art of arranging the world so we don't have to experience it. And I sort of feel like we live in this very strange moment, Steve. The operative word is frictionless, right? Where we've designed technologically a world where everything is frictionless. For example, I can push a button on my phone and have a book or a cold plunge or a bottle of X or a package of Y dropped to my house within a day or two, right? That's probably the best example of frictionless. Maybe this conversation we're having here is frictionless. But a little bit of friction is actually really useful for mind, body, and soul. And what we do with breathing at Nordic Flow is this. We train our humans, we teach our humans, we coach our humans to treat their breath as a superpower. We humans are able to consciously and strategically take ownership over our breathing. And if we are breathing upwards of 20,000 breaths every day, Steve, which we are, and that's just 14 breaths per minute. Most people are breathing at rest 16 breaths, 18 breaths, 20 breaths per minute, which isn't very healthy, by the way. We can circle back to that. But let's say 20,000 breaths per minute, 20,000 breaths per day. That is 20,000 opportunities to steer with your breath in whatever personal or professional directions you wish. So treat your breath as a superpower. Learn how to be mindful of your breath and learn how to consciously and strategically steer your breathing. And you will begin to drop into, as we say, the flow. We humans, as far as we know, are the worst breathers in the mammalian kingdom. There are 5,400 mammals on this beautiful world: elephants, dolphins, yaks, Homo sapiens. We are the worst breathers. The good news, we are also able to take conscious and strategic control of our breath. As far as we know, maybe the only mammal with minds, with brains, with nervous systems, fully aware of how to drop into the flow by taking ownership of our breath. And I should say, at the root word of the word respiration or respire, I'm a bit of a word geek, is the Latin root spira or spiritus, from which so many powerful English words are derived. Spira, spirit, spirits, spiritual. When we respire, we breathe over and over again. When we aspire, aspiration, we breathe our way upwards to a higher goal or a vision for ourselves. That's what aspiration, that's what aspire means. When we inspire one another, what that means, Steve, is we actually breathe good energy into one another. Think of someone who's inspired you or someone you have inspired. It's a bit mysterious, this power of inspiration. But inspiring is something we can cultivate. And my favorite of the spiras is the word conspire. A conspiracy, which is a word that gets kind of a bad rap these days. But a conspiracy is simply a group of humans breathing together for strategic purpose. That's what a conspiracy is. So a really well-flowing family unit is kind of a conspiracy. A really beautiful romantic or platonic relationship is, when it's really in the flow, is a bit of a conspiracy. It's two or more people breathing together. So this power of breath is a superpower. It is our most fundamental, our most elemental superpower, the power of conscious strategic breathing. And by the way, I don't like using the word breath work. You probably heard this word breath work. It's so Protestant. It's so Puritan. It's so Western. We're going to do breath work. Yeah. It's like, how about breath play? How about that? Let's play with the breath rather than treat it as something we have to work at. We're so good at habit stacking all these health and wellness protocols all the time, right? In the spirit of James Clear's Atomic Habits, for example, or in the spirit of the so-called biohackers, not a term I love. The word hacking suggests to me like you've got a machete and you're, working your way through the jungle. Rather, let's maybe be mindful of the power of breath and be playful with the breath. So I was just say, that's kind of the foundation for what we do at Nordic Flow and Nordic Wave, our cold plunge sister organization. We bring this mindful power of conscious strategic breathing to the table, and then we build from there.
Do you think, two things that keep us alive, breath and our heart, right? Like oxygen and our heart beating. Do you think we, as human beings, we just take them for granted?
I do. Thousands of years ago, Steve, the ancients discovered that we can use our breath to actually bring our heart, and I'd invite you, those listening, watching, just put your hand over your heart for just a moment. Take a nice deep inhale through the nose. Keep those shoulders relaxed. And then a nice deep exhale through the nose. Nice. So we can use our breath, what we call balance breathing, mindfully, to pull our heart and our entire circulatory system, in fact, into alignment with our breathing, with our respiratory system. And we can do that in just a few long, or what we like to call light, slow, and deep breaths. LSD, little natural microdosing, right? We breathe in, we breathe out, and we breathe in. And as you breathe in, imagine your heart slightly expanding and speeding up. And as you breathe out, imagine your heart slightly contracting and slowing down. And that's what happens when we mindfully breathe nasally, connecting heart to breath. Now, the scientists, of course, have a nice wonky word for this. They call it coherence. When the heart and the breath are in flow, they're in a dialogue with one another. I like to imagine the heart-breath relationship as a dance. And the dance is very simple. Breathing in, the heart expands and speeds up. And breathing out, the heart contracts and slows down. Now, the other thing we know, two other things. First of all, for the fitness and sports people in the room, this kind of mindful breathing, connecting breath to heart, also optimizes what is called HRV, heart rate variability, which has become kind of a premium measure of one's fitness these days. Heart rate variability simply refers to the heart's nimbleness, its ability to beat variably moment by moment and breath by breath, in accord with whatever metabolic needs, Steve, you have in front of you. Woolly mammoth jumps out, chases you. You want your heart to respond right away. Conversely, if you're lying down to sleep at night, and so many of us are not sleeping very well, I'm sure you've heard, we want our heart just to kind of settle down and relax and tuck itself in for the night. How do we do that? We use our breath mindfully, strategically to enter into this conversation, this dance, this dialogue with our heart. Now, the other thing about the heart that's so remarkable, we've got 40,000 neurons, sensory neurons in the heart. So many, in fact, that scientists are now beginning to realize that the seat of flow is not up here. It's not in the brain. It's actually here in the heart. And again, we've known this for a long, long time, but to your question, Steve, we've kind of forgotten it. So when we tune our heart with our breath, our heart actually projects an electromagnetic energy field. It's fascinating. And we can actually steer and enlarge, expand our electromagnetic energy field from our heart with the power of conscious strategic breathing. This is based on the work of, among others, Dr. Joseph Dispenza, who I'm guessing you may have heard of.
I think if people are listening to this and haven't heard of Joe Dispenza, they've been living under a rock.
Yeah, so, Dr. Joe he's performed a valuable service for Team Human. He's reminded us that the true measure, the true power of ourselves as we flow through the world is not trapped up here in the brain per se. It's actually this conversation between the brain, nervous system, our heart, and lots of other elements within the mind, body, soul, integrative self. It's so fascinating.
Hmm. So, talk to me about what are some of the big benefits that you see, not just in breath, but also the cold immersion and the cold water therapy.
Yeah. So taking sort of a big picture view, there's so much focus right now on entropy, which refers to kind of the breaking down of everything. You may have heard everything is breaking down. We're so polarized. Nothing seems to be working. But we forget entropy's kind of flip, which is called syncope. Syncope is the power of nature, the power of humans to rebuild, to heal, to put back together, right? And we're always, as we're flowing, we're always in syncope. We're always healing. We're always putting things back together. We're always kind of patching things up and restoring what is broken. And so this is a call to your listeners and viewers to honor syncope. And again, the breath is at the core, I imagine, of syncope. 20 plus thousand breaths per day. These are opportunities to rebuild, to heal, to put back together, to integrate. Yeah. So as we use the breath to heal and put things back together, as we kind of move through the world, right? And we're projecting this electromagnetic energy field from here that we're dialing in with the breath. Yeah. We are able to influence our personal and professional circumstances as we inspire others and are inspired by them, as we aspire upwards, as we conspire with one another. And think of the experience we just had together in Sardinia. There was so much of this happening, like all day, every day for 4 days. It was just amazing. It's why we go to these kinds of events and just drop into flow with these beautiful humans from all over the world, because there's people who come to these sorts of events are kind of self-selecting for this kind of experience. Yeah. So we sort of lead with the breath as the foundation. We appreciate the value of syncope, our ability to heal and integrate and put things back together again. Yeah. And then there's another layer on top of this, which is a fundamental biological concept called hormesis. Hormesis. Are you familiar? Hormesis?
A little bit, but you're going to explain it to us.
Let's unpack it. So we're all familiar with stress, the chronic stress, right? The distress, right? That creates dis-ease in the culture. We hear about this 24/7. I'm so stressed. Everything is so stressful. Everyone seems so stressed. And, there are at least 7 or 8 reasons why everyone seems to be so stressed all the time. Beginning with the fact that we're doing too much of this. We're sitting too much. We're on our screens too much. We're too sedentary. We're not moving our bodies nearly enough. We're not sleeping very well. There's 4. The foods that we eat are shitty. We're eating crap, right? But most importantly, I would say the stories we are ingesting from the culture are driven by cortisol. We are ingesting fear 24/7. Look at any Netflix TV show, for example. Look at the so-called news, for example, right? These 24/7 digital media channels spend a lot of time and money and energy pumping fear into the culture. And fear driven by cortisol in the body and mind is debilitating. And this is where the stress is coming from. You used the word disconnected earlier. I think that's right. Because we haven't taught ourselves and our children that we actually are in beautiful flow with the rest of living and breathing creation. Again, the mystics, cultures all over the world for forever have understood the power of this beautiful flow. But over the past, I would say 300 or 400 years, mechanistic, reductionist science, engineering, technology, we spoke of this, have kind of beaten out of us this beautiful appreciation and cultivated practice of flow. So back to hormesis. So hormesis is the flip side of distress, of chronic stress. Hormesis refers to voluntary stress. Voluntary stress, which we can regularly apply in our lives in titrated, measurable doses with recovery. Recovery is critical to build resilience of mind, body, and spirit. I'm going to say that again. Hormesis is voluntary stress, positive stress, sometimes called EU stress. It's Greek, from the Greek, eustress, positive good stress, regularly applied in a titrated, measurable dose with recovery to build resilience of mind and body and spirits. When you go to the gym and you lift weights and you put them down and recover and you do a few sets and then you go home and you recover, what happens? Oh, your muscles get a little bit bigger and stronger. That's hormesis, right? When you go jump in a pool or you do a yoga workout or you go for a walk or you get on the bike or you take a hike up into the Himalayas or you do some push-ups, some sit, doesn't matter. What are you doing? That's hormesis. Every living biological creature, plant, animal, mineral, engages in the hormetic process all the time. So adopting hormetic protocols, like a little bit of breath work, which are specific kinds of breathing exercises that can actually bring your body and mind through a voluntary stress and recovery circuit, perhaps most famously Tumo, the Tibetan term Tumo, inner fire breathing. What we call resilience breathing at Nordic Flow, what the Wim Hof Hofsters, and I'm one of them as a Wim Hof instructor, has kind of repopularized in the Western world what the scientists call cyclic hyperventilation. Times 40 breaths, breath hold, followed by recovery breath. Do that 3 or 4 times, right? Takes about 12 to 15 minutes per day. That's hormesis. And with that simple resilience breathing exercise, you can take the 60,000 miles, Steve, you can convert that to kilometers for me, 60,000 miles of circulatory tubing in your body, all the way down to your smallest capillaries, which are micro-muscled. You can take your 1,500 miles of respiratory tubing from the tips of your nose down into the alveoli, those tiny air sacs in your lungs. You can take the 11 pounds of respiratory muscles in your body, beginning with your diaphragm. Take all of that to the gym for 12 to 15 minutes every day or two and exercise hormetically, mind, body, and soul. So hormesis is a powerful biological evolutionary mechanism that we humans can very easily tap into with the power of our breath, the power of movement. And to bring it around to cold plunging, I'm becoming more and more convinced, Steve, that there is no more powerful protocol for inducing hormetic response quickly, efficiently, powerfully with recovery than cold plunging. Now, you and I did a lot of cold plunging when we were together. Do you want to weigh in on that? How was that experience for you?
That was awesome. And it was interesting because I've attended a Wim Hof weekend here in Australia, and it was phenomenal. About probably 9 months prior to that, I started having cold showers morning and night, no warm showers. And that taught me a lot about myself. And even when you kind of get into winter, it was starting to get a little bit hard. But when I went to that weekend, it was really interesting because I think it brought back to, and it's something that I've been talking about recently, and I've heard a lot with some of the retreats I've been attending, is intention in everything we do. So some people go, oh, I'm going to go and, jump in the ocean, or I'm going to go and jump in a cold plunge, and they just jump in. Now, Rob, and you kind of, there were some cold plunge virgins in Sardinia that were sitting there very nervously or standing around the ice plunge when we were there. And, did we just, did you just say, hey, just jump in, guys? No, you didn't. You prepare, you set the intention, we set the environment. You could actually feel the connection of all of us there, standing there. We all got our arms around each other. We felt the connection. We felt the warmth. We felt the energy in that environment. And then, when we got into the ice plunge and it was, each of our turns, there was the little drumming or the, whatever you were doing behind, just to bring some energy to the breath and energy to the experience. And also like the stance. Is it the warrior stance?
The horse stance.
Horse stance. Yeah. Which Wim obviously uses. And and it just brings connection. So for me, it was brilliant. But the interesting thing is after that weekend, and after that time of cold showers, I got up one day in my local gym, and I got up to about 20 minutes, right? In the cold plunge, because I was just chatting, because I'd just become so okay. Now I was bloody cold when I got out, after I was like, it's been 20 minutes. Which brings me to a question, Rob. So many people these days say cold plunge. Oh, I can do it for 10 minutes. I can do it for 15 minutes. You can read lots of stuff online. Do it for 3 minutes, do it for 5 minutes, do it for 8 minutes. You'll see so many people that are, saying how long you should do it. I'd love to get your thoughts on there, and let listeners know what do they need to be doing, how often, how long. I'd really love that knowledge to be passed on to listeners.
You bet. So let me speak from the scientific community for a moment. 2 minutes in a cold plunge is what the current science suggests is the minimum time in a cold plunge for the maximum benefits. So anything beyond 2 minutes is gravy. And in fact, too much beyond 2 minutes is probably a little dangerous. So be mindful. What we teach at Nordic Flow and Nordic Wave is this: listen to your body. Number one, there is no one right temperature, time, duration for you in the cold. In the same way, Steve, if you walk into a gym as a newbie, or you walk into a gym as someone who's a seasoned weightlifter, you're going to drop into flow in the gym based on where you're coming in and what your experience and goals are. Same thing with cold plunging. There's a lot of raging discussion and debate about men and women and the temperature and the time and this and that. We simply suggest start low, go slow, listen to your body, and maybe set the temperature at 60 degrees Fahrenheit. We can convert that to Celsius, yeah, and go in for maybe 2 minutes if your body feels like it's okay in that space. The first half of a 2-minute cold plunge is the challenging half. That's when you get in, your body reacts with that cold shock. And as you said, the goal is to come in with intent, having prepared mind and body with the power of your breath, so that when you get in the cold, you have that cold shock reaction, perfectly normal. That's your body alerting you that you're in a hostile environment. You learn how to use the breath to steer through that initial cold shock and bring yourself into a place of relaxed calm as smoothly and as quickly as you can. And for seasoned cold plungers, it's really fun to get to a point in your cold plunge practice where you drop into a plunge. We have vertical plunges. We call them the Viking. So it's fun that you're literally dropping in. Super cool. And how many breaths can you bring yourself from that cold shock into that state of relaxation? For me, if I'm on my game, I can do it in a single breath. But I do notice when I've been traveling for a while, I come back to a very cold plunge, and again, it takes me 3 or 4. It's like, oh, right, I haven't done this in a while. So that's sort of the name of the game, is simply honoring the cold as a teacher. As Wim Hof likes to say, the cold is a teacher, merciless yet righteous. Shout out to Wim. And the cold is a diagnostic tool. The cold is giving you information about how you are flowing mind, body, spirits in the moment. So listen to what the cold has to teach us. And the best part of a cold plunge is the 4 hours after. you get out and warm up. Because tell me if you've had this experience, Steve, your body is doing this, whoa, 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 right? And your mind is like, muy claro. It's like, ooh, okay, I feel sharp. So I'll be sitting, having lunch or in a meeting or whatever, 11 noon, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm like, oh, I still feel that. The residuals of the power of the cold and that plunge. And it's really, really something. I should say a few other things about kind of emerging interesting things going on in the cold plunge universe. There's some evidence, Steve, to suggest that a regular cold plunge practice helps our body shake off, somatically, shake off trauma that we keep stored in the body. We in the West, I'm sure you know, are very fond of talk therapy, like lie down on the couch, let's talk for an hour, let's do this for months or years, and we'll see if we can figure out what's going on with you, right? Which is fine. Cold seems to have a way, and again, every body is unique and sovereign. Every mind and body is on one's own journey. Cold does seem to have a way of really shaking loose informed trauma in mind and body. And I want to be very careful here. I'm not speaking scientifically. There's still more work to be done. But this somatic response in cold water is based on the work of Dr. Peter Levine, whose probably best known book is called Waking the Tiger Within. And it has to do with how we can use somatic practice, literally somatic meaning the body, to work our way through and out of particular trauma that we store there. So that's fascinating thing number one. Fascinating thing number two, it seems when we get into a cold plunge that the cold water actually invigorates and even creates new mitochondria, which are the energy centers of the cells, and even, it seems, creates biophotonic light energy inside our bodies as part of this experience. It's very mysterious, and we're trying to figure this out. Most of your listeners and viewers may be familiar with brown fat, the mitochondria-rich fat that we're all born with as babies, and if we don't use it, we lose it by the time we're adults. Cold plunging practice actually recruits brown fat in the body. It takes the white fat, nobody's really fond of, and turns it into mitochondria-rich brown fat. And there are protocols and exercises and breathing opportunities to actually help re-engage and bring brown fat back into play in combination with the cold. It's so interesting, right? So we can actually not just regenerate, but expand the reach of our mitochondria and our brown fat in our bodies over time with a regular cold plunge practice. So that's interesting thing number two. It's so wild. And last thing I'll say, number three, the most powerful element of a cold plunge protocol, we argue at Nordic Wave and Nordic Flow, is the psychological resilience you develop simply getting into cold water most every morning, getting out of cold water, having learned how to navigate, relax, calm your nervous system with the power of your breath, warm up, and then go into your day. Because short of getting hit by a bus, Steve, you will probably do nothing harder in your day than getting in and out of a cold plunge. And so that psychological resilience prepares us, hormetic stress, voluntary positive use stress with recovery, it prepares us for the chronic stress that we all experience just flowing through the world, dealing with what we're dealing with personally, professionally every day. So to button it all up, 5 to 10 minutes of a cold plunge practice regularly brings all of those benefits. And I haven't even talked about the benefits that most people have heard of. Anti-inflammation, improved immune system, increased white blood cell counts, etc. Last thing I'll say, if you're an athlete, rather than doing a cold plunge after your workout, do the cold plunge prior to your workout. We call this pre-chilling the workout. Now that sounds crazy. At first you're like, wait a minute, I'm going to get in cold water, and then you're going to ask me to work out. Yes, warm up after you come out, and
Does
then drop into your workout.
So, Rob, does that, because I've heard some discussion around this, is that for cardio, athletic base, or is it weight or just weight training?
Yeah, great question. So if your goal is hypertrophy, you want bigger muscles, you especially do not want to do a cold plunge right after doing a big strength workout in the gym, because cold water, as we all know, is acts as an anti-inflammatory, right? And the goal with a strength workout is actually to inflame the muscles, right? Build that hypertrophy and then recover. And so the cold plunge after a strength workout tends to nip all those benefits in the bud. I think the recommendation these days is wait at least 8 hours from your strength workout in the gym to your cold plunge. But when you cold plunge before your workout, Steve, especially in the morning, and I was a skeptic, I was like, no. And I started doing it about 8 months ago, and now I'm kind of like, oh yes, yeah. Like my own morning routine, I'll get up and kind of come outside and do a little bit of breathing and qigong, just to kind of warm everything up, a little fascial flow. And then I go into the cold plunge. And I come out and I warm up, and then I start sort of my regular stretching, breathing, running, swimming, whatever it is I'm doing, walking, taking a day off. Recovery is so important. Yeah. And what I've noticed is the cold plunge kind of sets the transition between sleep and wakefulness. That's number one. Like if you're not awake in the morning, after the cold plunge, you'll be awake. Right? 100%. Yeah. And again, you're feeling that kind of buzzing of mind and body. But the other thing the cold plunge does is it primes you for the workout ahead, sharpens the mind. You cool everything off, you warm everything back up, and going through that process. And again, it's 10-minute process, right? Once you kind of dial in the protocol, your body is ready to rock. Like, let's go. What are we doing? I'm ready. So it's a really powerful element to a morning, could be also evening fitness routine. And I didn't fully appreciate that until quite recently. So I'm always make it a point to highlight that. Try the pre-chilling. If you have a regular cold plunge practice, see how it goes for you. Listen to your mind, listen to your body. Notice when you drop into your workout, whatever it is, walk, run, swim, bike, yoga, whatever, after a plunge, recovery, and warm up. Notice if there's a difference there.
Yeah, love it. Great information, great tips. Now, you were talking earlier about, some of the things that that have happened in your life that have made you kind of realize. I think a lot of people listening here, many people hit a crossroads. They hit an event in their life. They hit a chapter that they don't know how to write the next chapter, right? And I know you're big on authoring your own story. I think there's one thing, one big thing that stops people from authoring their own story. And a lot of the time it's fear of the unknown, fear of, taking that step forward, fear of who they're going to lose, or fear of giving something up that they have to, whether it's them as a person, other people. And, it is that unknown. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, amen, brother. Yeah. Yeah. Fear. I would suggest that fear is probably in the culture right now. And by the culture, I mean kind of the global culture of the digital, the digerati, let's say. Um, I think fear seems to be the dominant. I'm not sure if it's an emotion, a sentiment, a feeling, call it what you will, for all the reasons we discussed earlier. And fear of uncertainty, or the fear of uncertainty, as you just said, it compounds, I think, our everyday normal sort of concerns, let's say, because there is a lot of uncertainty in the world right now. I would suggest a couple of things here. Number one, there has always been uncertainty in the world. And number two, uncertainty leads to some more Team Human superpowers beyond conscious strategic breathing. Number one, uncertainty leads to humility. None of us know everything. In fact, there's so much we don't know, each of us, which humility leads to curiosity. It leads to asking questions. It leads to compassionate conversation with other humans whom you respect. And you pretty quickly recognize in those compassionate conversations where you are curious that you are certainly not alone, that probably everyone else is feeling a little bit of that fear and a little bit of that uncertainty. So, moving from there, humility, curiosity to compassionate conversation, you maybe develop a little bit of backbone, a little bit of conviction about maybe making your next move, personally and professionally. And that takes, I would maybe end with this superpower. There's a list of them. Courage. Courage, translated from the French down to the Latin, courage literally means sort of rage of the heart, back to the heart, right? Lead with the heart. Don't be afraid in an era of uncertainty where we're being humble, curious, compassionate conversationalists, developing a little bit of conviction about our next moves. Don't be afraid to lead from here, not from here, but from here. And when I say lead, I mean your own personal journey, which, by the way, when you do that, when you aspire upwards on your own personal and professional journey, you will inspire others around you, and you will be entered into new conspiracies. You will learn to conspire with the humans who come across your path. Again, back to Sardinia. I know you're having lots of really interesting conspiratorial conversations with a lot of the humans you met there, as am I, as I think are we all. And that is the beautiful power of being a human in an age of fear and uncertainty. If you can cultivate a little bit of those superpowers, Steve, my sense is you're going to be just fine. But the fear is to be breathed through, I would say. And this is where cultivating a mindful breath play practice is helpful. And to be clear, this is not an on the mat practice. I mean, we have a lot of exercises, protocols, I've mentioned several of them here, that we encourage and teach in our Nordic Flow breath training ecosystem. We have 6 arenas within the ecosystem in which we play and work. I'm talking about something much more elemental and fundamental, which might be thought of as perhaps mindful, balanced breathing, natural microdosing, breathing light and slow and deep. All day, every day. The way we were built, the way we are designed as humans to breathe 99% of our lives, awake, asleep, at work, at play. All the other stuff, the Wim Hof stuff, the cold plunging, that's gravy and it's powerful. And we should do those on the mat and in the plunge practices. But this is something even more elemental, more fundamental. We've all seen newborn babies, held them, snuggled with them, smelled the top of their heads. There's a name for that. I can't remember, but it's that beautiful, like, oh, I'm just here in the world for the first time smell. Newborn babies come out of the womb breathing perfectly, the way we were built to breathe. And by around the age 6 or so, 6 years of age, things start to go south because, civilization intervenes, culture intervenes. And, we ask these young humans to sometimes behave in ways that maybe we are not evolved to behave. Organized schooling comes to mind, right? You're going to sit at this desk and do these things. And I say this as a teacher and a professor for 30 years. I'm familiar. So cultivating this daily mindful LSD balanced breathing habit And you can do this, you can practice this as little as 5 or 10 minutes a day in the flow of all of your other activities. And maybe it might be helpful. We can just walk through this if this would be helpful. So you're in the car and you're driving to the pool, let's say, to swim, as I was this morning. Breathing light and slow and deep, 3 steps. Number 1, shut your mouth. Breathe through your nose. The nose. 80% of humans are breathing dysfunctionally. 92% amongst athletes are breathing dysfunctionally, which is interesting. Athletes tend to be stressed, competitive, goal-oriented, anxious. There's a lot of mouth breathing going on. I know, like you, Steve, I travel a lot. I witness this in airports, at bars, restaurants. There's a lot of mouth breathing, a lot of dysfunctional breathing. Step number 1, the biggest first step, shut your mouth, train yourself, bring your breath into your nose. We derive 3 dozen benefits from nose breathing versus mouth breathing. The most important of which is we generate here in the perisinal cavity a magic molecule. Perhaps you've heard of it, called nitric oxide. Nitric oxide kills bacteria, viruses, germs as they enter the body, number 1. And nitric oxide is a powerful vasodilator, which means it opens up our entire respiratory system from the nose down to the alveoli and the lungs. So number 1, instead of breathing heavy through the mouth, shut the mouth, breathe light through the nose. Number 2, and by the way, number 1, light breathing we think of in the Nordic flow universe as breath flow. This is about biochemistry, breathing biochemistry. When you breathe through your nose and shut your mouth within 3 to 6 weeks, you actually retrain what are called chemoreceptors, base of the brainstem into the lungs, that measure the relative alkalinity of your body breath by breath and account for the mix of respiratory gases coming in and out of your body. We want those chemoreceptors to be fully optimized for nasal breathing so that every breath you take is that much more powerful, efficient, relaxed, alert, calm. It's astonishing. But I could talk about this all day, but I won't. So breathe light instead of heavy. Number 2, light, slow, and deep, LSD, natural microdosing, balanced breathing, breathing slow. We think of this as breath mind. Breath flow is light, breath mind is slow in the Nordic flow ecosystem. Or another way to think about it is the psychology of breathing. How do we use our mind to begin to take conscious strategic ownership of our breath? We talked about the heart already. We cover our heart with one hand, we take our other hand, we place it below the heart, center of the thorax. We can also steer our nervous system with the power of light, slow, deep breathing. So if you breathe in through the nose, imagine moving your nervous system more alert. And as you breathe out through the nose, imagine moving your nervous system more relaxed. Inhale is what the scientists call sympathetic, fight, flight, or fright. Don't love those terms, but people know what they mean. Exhale, we go parasympathetic, rest and digest. Relaxed. Think about this, Steve. If every young human born into this world learned very quickly as they became conscious and awake and alert that they could steer their nervous system, their entire autonomic nervous system, with the power of breathing. Wouldn't that be neat? And again, the ancients understood this. So while we're here for a moment, most of us tend to run a little hot. We're a little anxious. We're a little distressed. How do we use our breath to rebalance our nervous system? We simply lengthen our exhale over our inhale. We breathe in, and then as we breathe out, just imagine extending the exhale for a second or two. Maybe add a little pause at the bottom there. So that's breath mind, breathing slow instead of fast. I mentioned earlier, humans are breathing at rest 16, 18, 20 breaths per minute. Way too many. We like to see 10 to 12 resting breaths per minute. And again, this is a very simple skill that with 5 to 10 minutes of daily practice, you can bring it back around. in 3 to 6 weeks. Like, it's amazing. Last stop on our tour, breathing deep instead of shallow. And by deep, I mean I take both my hands, I put them on either side of my belly. I'm now massaging our body's most powerful respiratory muscle. It's called the diaphragm. And when we breathe in through the nose, heart expanding, nervous system alerting, we want to feel on that inhale our belly pushing out against our hands gently. So we breathe in, feel that belly push out, and as we exhale, the belly returns to midline. When we begin to connect the nose to the diaphragm, Steve, we're breathing deep into the belly. And oh, by the way, we're also activating the intercostals, expanding and contracting the ribs, which are designed to be fluid to protect the lungs and stabilize us. When we breathe deep, every single full breath we take, the diaphragm gives every one of our internal organs a light massage. So that's the heart, the stomach, the kidneys, the spleen, the pancreas, the bottom of the lungs. 20,000 free massages a day, simply by breathing light and slow and deep. When we strengthen our diaphragm here, breathing deep, we restore strength to our core. This is fairly well known. Yeah. And finally, when we breathe light, slow, and deep, and we activate the diaphragmatic muscle is connected to our lymphatic system, which flushes all of the toxins, wastes, dis-ease out of our body. So 20,000 light, slow, deep breaths per day instead of 20,000 heavy, fast, shallow breaths per day, which is the way 80% of us are breathing, ripple outward very quickly into our lives, mind, body, and spirit. We begin to sort of appreciate after a few weeks of 5 to 10 minutes a day of simply practicing breathing light, slow, and deep. Whatever you're doing, I do this in the car, one hand on the wheel, the other hand on my belly, driving up to the pool. Maybe throwing a little hum. I'm extending my exhale. I'm really relaxed. So by the time I get in that pool, Steve, I'm just like, oh, let's go. Let's get aquatic. Let's be dolphins. So that's kind of the baseline. If I were to leave your listeners and viewers with one single powerful, elemental, fundamental breathing protocol, it would be simply to practice breathing consciously and strategically in balanced fashion, LSD breathing, natural microdosing, light, slow, and deep. Connect the nose to the belly, and everything in between the nose and the belly, you are able to pull into alignment and drop into flow. It's astonishing.
Yeah, perfect. Now, Rob, we've talked about breath. We've talked about cold. What I'd love to know through, your experience, your lived experience in your life, the journey and the people you've met, the experiences you've had. You're a yakka. We can tell that. We're kind of 55 minutes into the episode and you're like a walking encyclopedia. But what are some top tips that you would give to a young Rob and you'd give to our listeners, right? In regards to how can they hack life? What are some key tips that you have learned that you could share with listeners, maybe people that are listening at the moment that are just, wondering what's happening, where they are in their story, and can help them shift their perspective?
Yeah, gosh, that's a beautiful question. Number one, cultivate a daily morning practice. Number two, in conjunction with putting away all of these, putting away all of your digital devices at night, putting them all into airplane mode, shutting them all down, and giving your analog self, your mind, body, soul, your flesh and blood self, Steve, a hard break from your digital self every night. Number three, do not engage with your digital self in the morning. until after you've adhered to number one, your morning dailies. In the Nordic universe, we refer to Nordic mornings. Nordic is an acronym. I won't bore you with it here, but a little bit of quiet time, a little bit of breathing and meditation, a little bit of movement, a little bit of gratitude, preferably outside, or elements of that outside. I would, of course, suggest a cold plunge. Not for everybody. Be mindful of your flow. Fourth, keep uncertainty in mind. Uncertainty, as we, I think, agreed, leads to curiosity, and curiosity leads to opportunity. We have a tendency, I think, in our mind and body, and I think we're all probably fall into this, not a trap, but it's a habit thing. We tend to imagine ourselves as kind of a fixed entity, personally and professionally. It's like, oh, Rob is X, Steve is Y, they are Z. Yeah? And the truth is, when we appreciate the 20,000 breath per day flow with the rest of living, breathing creation, every breath, every opportunity, every moment presents often unappreciated or unwitnessed opportunities for learning, for growth, for simply slowing down and having some gratitude. Carl Jung referred to this as synchronicity, which is, I'm guessing, a term your audience is familiar with. The mystics referred to this, went by many names, but I simply think of it as flow. When you're in flow and just attentive to the present moment, a cat crosses your path. Take the time. How's the cat doing? What's the cat going to teach you, right? Oh, I'm walking through the woods. Look at that. What's that bird up there? Ah, birds communicating. Birds telling me something. Wonder what it is. And these may sound like trite examples, but I would suggest no, actually they're not. These are the ways in which the cosmos reveals itself to us. And again, it's a bit mysterious. Science will never understand it. I don't know that religion or spiritual teachings will ever understand it either. It's simply what it is. So I could go on, but I think maybe I'll button it up here in this way. So I thought of myself as a university professor for 20 years, and I was pretty good at what I did. In 2020, for a whole bunch of reasons, it became clear to me that I was no longer called to be a university professor in higher education. That would be a conversation for a separate podcast. And at that moment, Steve, I felt what many of us feel, and you alluded to earlier. I felt fearful. I felt depressed. I felt that sense of uncertainty. I felt lost, a little disoriented. And it was around that time that I dropped into the Wim Hof Academy and discovered for the very first time, Steve, the power of conscious strategic breathing. I've been an athlete all my life. I've been deeply involved in various religious communities, spiritual communities over the course of my life. No one had ever spoken to me about the power of breathing. I was 50 years old. And I'm thinking to myself, why have I not known? I've lived half my life, if I'm lucky. And this is the first I'm hearing of this. So that was 6 years ago. And needless to say, I'm on a number of new journeys. You've alluded to a few here, and we've talked about them here. And if you had said to me, Steve, when I was young, to bring it all back around to your question, when I was 12 or 16 or 20 or 30 or 40, for that matter, oh, Rob, when you get to be in your mid-50s, you're going to be the head of education for a breath training company and a cold plunge company, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, I would have laughed out loud. I was like, what are you talking about? No. and yet here I am. And it's a power to It's the power of synchronicity, of uncertainty, of leaning into the fear and recognizing that if we're lucky, Steve, each of us has the opportunity to live many lives in the course of a single one. And that is a beautiful gift.
Mm. Yeah. Love it. Absolutely love it. Love the conversation. We could probably do about, we could probably do the longest podcast in history with the topics and the knowledge and the experience that you've had, which has been awesome. And I'm sure, I've been had a front seat to this conversation and been able to ask the questions and listen to the wisdom and the insights. And I can't wait to listen back to it. And I think listeners that have got to this point in the episode, I actually think this is an episode that they will want to listen back to as well, because there's so much information and there's pages and pages of notes on ways people can implement things and shift their perspective in life. But it comes down to the breath. It comes down to the cold, comes to, kind of breathing into the fear and, looking into that curiosity. And one of the key things I was thinking really is I jumped out of a plane at the end of last year and I was fearful of it. It was my biggest fear. Jumped out, I skydived. And the interesting thing is on the morning, I thought I got up there and I was so excited and I was shitting myself inside, right? But I got up to this and I was like, right, I'm going to breathe through this. I'm going to kind of be really optimistic. And I was so glad that I was the first one to jump out of the plane. And I was thinking about this when we were standing in Sardinia, and I was thinking about this earlier when we were talking about the cold plunge experience. If the first person that jumped in that cold plunge in Sardinia, right, jumped out within 10 seconds, how would that have changed the trajectory or the experience for the other 12 or 13 people that were to come, right? How many of those people would have gone, no, I can't do this?
We are social creatures, we humans. And I'd never thought about it that way before, Steve. You're absolutely right. We are,
but it's about, the same with the skydiving. I jumped first, and it was interesting having to jump first. Have you ever skydived?
No, but I'm going to now.
Yeah, perfect. But the first time I skydived, first time I was sitting there and I was the first one to jump, and he's like, because you're the first one, we've got to get ready earlier, and I've got to kind of hang you out the plane for probably a little bit longer than normal, right? And so I'm sitting there just hanging out of the plane and then off I go. But it was interesting. I sat there and I went, I'm glad I was the first, because if I was the third or fourth, how would I have gone with other people going, out the door? So it's something that, I reflected on, and going back to this fear element is, you were talking about it, right? We watch the news, we read the newspapers, we watch social media, and we are very much molded into other people's stories or other people's fears or other people's feelings and emotions, that then it actually changes our lived experience, and it restricts us from having and living the life that we're meant to live. And I think for listeners, listening to this, lean into the discomfort. There's comfort at the other end of discomfort. Lean into the fear, lean into the feelings or emotions, and wonder, is this me or is this someone else's story that I am aligning my story with? And, at the end of the day, as you said, it was your father that, kind of retired, was it? Yeah, retired, and then 3 years later passed away, right? Lived with a lot of, he would have regretted not doing a lot of things, right? So at the end of the day, I think, like, tomorrow is not promised for any of us. So live today, and whatever you can do today, just do it to your fullest, right? Because, I know that if I don't wake up tomorrow, I'm happy. I in recent years, through the journey I've been in, I tell the people I love that I love them. They all know how much they're loved. I focus on living each and every day to my fullest and making as much impact in this world as I can. And I know that's why you and I get on so well, Rob, right? Because you and I are both around connection, communication, environment, and surrounding ourselves with people and places that just bring the best out in ourselves. So I would challenge listeners to take everything that Rob said through this discussion and what I've finished with, and just work to be the best person that you can be. Think about that baby that was brought into the world breathing perfectly, right? Let's get back to how we as humans were meant to live, how we were meant to breathe, how we were meant to love, how we were meant to trust.
So beautiful. Yes. And you're touching on gratitude here, which is an overused word these days. And yet, when we aspire, Steve, we inspire and are inspired, and we conspire in the matrix, if you will, of gratitude. And you said it so beautifully. We begin to feel our way into new possibilities, new opportunities, new potentialities for ourselves. There's an old phrase, and maybe we end with this. You've probably heard it, but it's a beautiful way to maybe button this up. Energy flows where focus goes. Energy flows where focus goes, and we attune our focus and direct our energy with the power of our breath. And that's an old, ancient discovery that let us all rediscover. Energy flows where focus goes through the power of our breath.
It's beautiful. And I think what sits aligned that is that focus, that's the intention, having an intention with everything we do, whether it's cold plunge, whether it's breath, whether it's a speech, whether it's, hugging our loved ones or, spending time with our friends and being present. It's about having the intention in everything we do. So, Rob, I am sincerely grateful for you, brother. It's been an absolutely honor and a privilege to have you. Chat for over an hour, and it's been brilliant. I can't wait to do another episode with you. There's many topics that we can dive into, but the topic, I think, and the theme that we've shared today, I think is going to speak to a lot of people, and I think it's going to help a lot of people. Now, for those that want to connect with you, connect with Nordic Flow, Nordic Wave, throw some questions out to you. What's the best way for them to connect with you, Rob?
My email is contact@Dr. spelled out robwilliams.com. Contact@drrobwilliams.com. That's probably the easiest way. NordicFlow.io and the NordicWave.com are our breath training and cold plunge sister companies, bi-coastal here in the United States. Contact@drrobwilliams.com. Would love to hear from your Noise of Life community. And Steve, I got to say, I so appreciate you, and it's been a pleasure getting to know you over the past couple of months. And I sense, my friend, more adventures ahead.
Definitely watch this space. So, all right. Thanks, brother. Love you, mate.
Thanks, Steve. Love you too.